as well. You probably know more about him after the age of 25 or 30 than I do, actually, most of you. I know we have cousins, friends, and all that, so I really appreciate that. I've talked to a couple of folks, but please don't be bashful. Please, whatever little story is possible. And then afterwards, we're going right across the street, and we're going to have some food and drink across the street. So we're just going to pick up right from here and then go for Pat and E's house. So, I'm going to start from the beginning here. My first memories of Sean, he was an incredible artist. And I think some of the aunts might remember this. This wasn't like, oh my God, he's so smart. This was, oh my God, I can't believe a 6-year-old could draw such an intricate design, right? And so when we were in elementary school, at the beginning, early days, he was known as we say in Boston, the artist. Right? I'm from California. It's probably a funnier joke there. And it was, what we didn't understand that was sort of the precursor to a guy who was really different than most people. He was, he was very cerebral, and he had obviously this intellect that was extraordinary. And, I remember, again, I'm thinking about these little stories. You saw some in Facebook, I'll repeat, and then some others, but, I think I got a cold once, and somebody said, oh, no, why am I stuffy nose? And Sean went to describe how bacteria gets in your system, and then your immune system, the cells grab it and eat it. He was like, 7. Right? You just don't really think about it, right? And because he was sort of a different guy, you just kind of talked it up as that kid. We had, obviously, advanced placement lab, as we called it, and the funny thing was you just knew, and I think it started when you were like, I don't know, maybe 10 or something like that, but it was just guaranteed that you would be put in every advanced placement available. Like, it just wasn't even part of the question. It was like, oh yeah, of course you're going to go to the next highest possible thing that the city of Quincy has to offer. And then, and one other thing too, elementary school, I'm just picturing this. He would also, again, I just remember it's Adams Elementary, this is why I knew it was this. He would always, people would ask him, did you please explain to me Einstein's theory of relativity, right? It was kind of the joke of the city in a way, right? And, he'd come up and he'd explain E equals MC squared, times speed of light, and then they'd ask him, he'd be like, ha ha ha, kid. And then they'd be like, okay, so what does that piece of it mean? And he'd just unpack it. And you're like, oh, he actually does understand this.
Wow.
This isn't just a cute party trick, right? And then I think the next memory I have is reading books. And the two pieces, one, his room was filled with books. And when I mean filled, I mean like, if any of you have the misfortune of having to go to his apartment, you see things stacked up. Floor to ceiling, floor to ceiling, floor to ceiling. Books, books, books. Open the closet, books. Right? And how could somebody read so many books at the age of like 12, 13? And this is why. He would put a backpack full, and let me back up again too, because there's probably, the context is a little weird, coming from UFC sort of fighting. Sean was a bookworm nerd growing up, right? Big glasses, really thick, walked like this, introvert, and would just read. Every organ. He would fill a backpack. It was incredible. He just couldn't put anything else in it. You could see like corners of books sticking out. And then he would pick up a book and then walk all around Quincy. He'd walk the Star Market, go into the bookstore, the book department, sit there for 3 or 4 hours reading all their books, break down the list, go through a couple books in a few hours, walk home like this. In the middle of school, I remember it definitely in high school, but I'm assuming he did it in middle school too, as I kind of think about it. Just walking through the hallway, books, and to be fair, I think he's probably trying to escape something or whatever, right? We're all kind of complex. And this one little poignant story, though, you guys have been around here a while, when the Red Sox were bad in like sort of the early 80s and mid 80s, we couldn't give away Red Sox tickets. And my dad worked at Gillette, and we always had tons of baseball tickets. And I came home one late. I was like a half hour late. And you went, did you go? Yep. So I wasn't there. Sean was there, but he didn't like the games. Oh, Sean, you're coming, right? Brian's not here. I'm not getting rid of this ticket. They weren't that great. What was it, the outfield, the bleachers? Right behind the Mariners dugout. Well, Roger Clemens mowed down 20 batters for the first time ever. When the best, and Sean just read a book. And literally, my dad was like, pulling the book away, and the book would go up, pull it away, and my dad would get angry, Speaking of angry, and there's going to be a couple cousins, I'm glad we're writing this down. Sean had a temper growing up as well, and it didn't come out much because he was and all of a sudden you just cross that line, and he would go mental. That's what we'd say, right? He would go mental, and he would go so mental we had to tie him up.
Oh no!
So usually, and so all of a sudden we would have to take ropes, and we would have 3 or 4 people. Mike, you remember jumping on his back? Right? 3 or 4 people to get him down. Then you get him into a chair. You tie him up to the chair behind his back, and if you could get his hands behind his back, you're golden. But he would have that type of rage, that pent up, and we'll probably see that manifest itself later in life. And then, kind of moving forward, he's in high school, and it's still Sean. Now he's growing, by the way. He's a high school. He was always a bit tall, but in high school he grew from 5'11" to then 6'4", or whatever he eventually came to. And he gained weight, and now he's kind of fat in a way, right? And not muscular. It was a skinny fat. It wasn't like his head huskier, strength sort of thing, right? And people started to pick on him. And to be fair, even in middle school, people were picking on him, right? I remember having to have so many sit-downs. Brian Howlett came to the house. You remember him? Because he'd gotten in a massive fight. Brian Howlett was a linebacker for BC. Big kids. People would battle him. This is Quincy. It's a tough city, right? If you made it past the Winn-Dixie to get home without getting in a battle, that was a win, right? And so, everyone's kind of feeling it, but when you're tall and a bookworm, you're asking for it. And so he got picked on and beat up a lot, right? And so this persists, but he's getting bigger in high school, gaining weight. And then one day, and I think this is a pivotal moment, and I know the guy's name too, I can remember it, I'm not going to say it, kind of trying to clown him. Actually, it was a guy that was now lifting weights. He felt like he was a bigger, tougher guy, and he's going to push Sean, and Sean pushes him back, and it's like, what are you talking about? The nerd can't push me. And so all of a sudden, they're like, okay, this is, something's going to happen. And, people, I don't know how it was in Southie, but in Quincy, there's sort of sanctioned areas you go to fight, behind the temple, right, and then the big group of people follows people behind the temple, and then there's the fight. This was Thomas Crane Public Library, and so saying, we go to the library, there's a fight. And Sean and a group of probably this many people or so, maybe half actually thinking about it, everyone's like, yes, fight, right? And they get into the lawn, and Sean takes off his massive backpack, and then they're squared off like this, and Sean says to him, you want to fight me? And the guy goes, yes. And he turns to the person next to him and he goes, hold my glasses. The kid comes running up to him, in a rage, arms flying, and Sean hits him once, square in the face. His feet go up in the air, he's horizontal, lands down completely out. And everyone's like, holy shit, usually when it's kid fights, it's like, ow, 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 and bloody nose, and ow, ow, and like, oh, okay, break it up, it's over, and an adult comes in, it was over, right? The next morning, this guy's best friend, I remember his name too, but I'm not going to say it, but he's angry, he's going to, defend his friend in a way, or kind of make up for this, but he catches him in the parking lot before school. This is not a sanctioned area. But he paid the price. He comes running up to Sean. Same sort of thing, flying through the air, ready to attack. One punch, horizontal, flat down, knockdown. I actually thought I saw the little Tweety birds. It was a little punch. And so I think that was that that point, he realized he had a gift, for hitting men. Really, really, really hard. I even had a buddy go, "Oh my God, you saw him at the Old Street Gym. Did you ever see him hit a bag? It's unbelievable." Like, and we're like, "Yeah, because he was the nerdy, and it's a little bit of a story. Like, he was the nerd, like anyone who was young was like, there was Sean, a nerdy guy that, trying to put it, well, a couple things come together too. Him and I both joined the wrestling team at Quincy. Bit of a transformational thing. You start getting in shape, you gain confidence, you gain a fitness. Billy Blanks starts a studio. That fight I was just talking about, probably 100 yards away. Billy Blanks started a studio, his only first studio. We walk in, it's empty. It's just a huge building, empty. And Billy Blanks behind a huge table. And he's like, we're like, "Hey, what is this? Looks like you beat up Chuck Norris." I said, "On the front door, that's what it says." And he pulls out this pamphlet and gives it to us, and it says, "Model Actor Change." So we started training with Billy Blanks. Random thing, right? And, we're still kids. We're not finishing everything we started, but, going through some belts here, and he learns and that was his introduction to martial arts, right? And so we did the wrestling thing, which gives you a foundation of fitness and, winning and all those things you get out of sports, which is great. But then he gets into that martial arts, which is different, right? Because it's a lot of losing too, right? It's a lot of repetition and all that sort of thing. And then I'm going to sort of take it now to the college years. So Sean's now feeling himself a little bit better, right? He's in better shape. The story's actually following a pretty good arc. Actually, that's the thing. I'm like, you're going to love this one. So he says, "Hey, can you drive me? You went to Los Angeles, right?" And this is before I went there. And he's like, "Can you drive me, Brian?" And I'm like, sure, okay, I'll drive you. Or maybe you told me to drive him or something. Yeah, so you don't have to drive him, I'll drive him, right? So I drive up, and he goes, "Can you stop here first, this place?" And we're dirt road, like random, Amherst is out there, so. And I'm like, "Where the hell are we going? This doesn't seem I can see the buildings over there." And he goes, "Okay, just wait here a couple minutes." And he walks in, I see him walk in, I'm kind of watching my watch, and then I see him come out with a keg on his shoulder. He doesn't say anything, he just grabs the keg, puts it in the trunk. What just happened? He goes, "I feel like having some beers," and I knew they're having a party, so, it's the first day back in the dorms, I figured I'd treat the crew. So he just walked into an Amherst party. There's good people there, there's all types of football team, there's lots of people. I don't know who you're going to wind up with. And he just silently grabbed, and people kind of looked at him, walked out, and he just took a jet. And, I can't carry a keg on my shoulder, I don't know if you guys can. It was full, right? And he just carries it on his shoulder, dumps it in, and we get in there, and I think someone came to the dorm room and was like, "Hey, where'd you get that keg?" And he's like, "Well, that's mine." Right? And I know this sounds mean, but he was actually, look, we're all going, he's kind of feeling himself, and he wanted to treat his buddies in the dorm, right? And so that was that. The second one, and I hope this comes off right too, these are just memories from his college, but he would, I saw him dressed up a little weird, right? And him and his buddy, I don't know if he's here, his buddy was like a Golden Gloves boxer guy, I don't think he cared too much about other things, but he's a quiet guy too, right? But I saw them dressed up really weird one day, and I'm like, "What? You tell me, why do you do that? Like, are you trying to meet girls or not? Like, this isn't gonna help, guaranteed." And he said, honestly, Sean and I, sometimes we go up and we dress up weird, so maybe someone will pick on us. And what I think, really what kind of came out was, what he was kind of trying to do was teach a lesson to folks that might pick on somebody. And you might pick on somebody by mistake one day. And so he's trying to teach the universe a lesson. I think people might get that, right? By going out there and all of a sudden, pushing the wrong guy, and then you get destroyed, right? And then it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't pick on people, right? So those were, these interesting, granted, he's still the same kind of thing. It's like, now he reads books, but you don't see it as much, but he's reading these advanced books. It's kind of crazy. Oh, the other things I put in Facebook, that were, I'm trying to recall those little details, but, while we were in high school, and it really wasn't big. He was going to Harvard on Thursdays after school. I think he left a little early, take a train, go to Harvard and study quantum physics. Because one of the teachers is like, this is stuff's really, you need to be looking at some advanced stuff. And so, people just recognize it and sent him into Harvard high school. It doesn't happen that often, right? So then, things change. Obviously, he kind of gets out of college and he joins the police force. And this is probably when I start to lose track of him. I hope you guys can pick up some of the stories from here. And I do think somebody's going to tell some police stories. When I looked at that, I mean, he doesn't, his family's, he doesn't look like, going in, I should say. He did not look like the classic police officer, right? He did not have the makeup that you would always expect, right? And so when we looked at it, we were like, but he works at things, right? He works. And when he went in there, we kind of looked at it as like, it was his introduction to common sense, right? It was a master class in common sense, right? How to be an individual and work with people, right? And be good to people and be in situations over and over again. And he was not good at it at the beginning. He was not good at all, right? But he hung in there, and it benefited him dramatically. And then obviously, girls love cops, and he got to meet more girls. And you have details, and this is just, wonderful. He's starting to feel himself and, get more attention. Again, you're talking about a kid that was picked on until he was probably 17, right? And so I'm just kind of watching him grow into his own, and I just thought that was such an amazing thing. But of course, he takes it to the next level. And one day I heard this story. I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but, don't let the truth get in the way of good stories sometimes. But there was a guy, and he had a shotgun, and he was shotgun, man with shotgun, running around house and blah, blah, blah thing, and he was nearby, but he was not in his uniform. He did not have a weapon on him. And so Sean charges the scene and de-arms the man who has the shotgun with his bare hands. Can you imagine approaching? How do you get to the guy and get the thing out of there? How close could you get? I told him he kind of took the corner and surprised him from the back or something like that. But, who does that? Right? But, a little bit of a protector. And actually, one last theme, I forgot to mention the high school thing, because I think this theme might come up again. When Sean laid out those two kids, around that time, I was getting bullied myself, right? Like I said, making it past the quick pick and getting home was always a battle, right? This is Quincy in the early, whatever it was, late 70s, early 80s, and, you got beat up, you got chased, and it was embarrassing and humiliating and horrible. If anyone's ever been bullied, you'll know. It's horrible. And then Sean laid out those guys, and suddenly, that bullying vanished. And to a point where I would walk by and I'm like, please say something to me. Please hit me. Oh my God, I can't wait to see you get so embarrassed. No one ever did. They picked it up. Right? So now, now Sean's fully into martial arts. And this is all pretty blurry for me now, the police, martial arts, and where this all comes together and all that. The point I wanted to make out of it, we were still rooting for him to not do it. We're like, why are you going in and getting your head kicked in? We'd go see him, maybe watch a boxing match or something. We're like, this is crazy. You're supposed to be a professor. If you guys felt that, would please, you're a genius. Just get your PhD from Harvard, get your tweed jacket, and, you're the man. This is perfect. You're, you can be absent-minded. That goes with it, right? We're like, please. We're like, oh, maybe he'll just get beat up once hard enough, and never did. It was his passion, and he was going to go with it. And he did it right, and he did it his way. And I remember just kind of thinking, I'm like, why is this guy wasting his time in this UFC bullshit? Like, no one's going to watch it. No one cares. He's there so early getting into it. And you know what? Honest, thank God he didn't listen to us. Just thank God he didn't. He was ahead of the curve. all the time. And then maybe coming to this, a bit of a pivotal event, the Kimbo Slice fight, right? I didn't watch it live. I didn't know he was even doing it.
I haven't watched it.
I never watched it. And I just remember, when you think of somebody who has a plan or is working towards something, he kind of mentioned to me, he goes, Brian, I'm kind of getting older. I don't have much time. I got to make my mark. I got to make something happen. And that's when, and I hope, was anyone here at the Kimbo Slice fight by any chance? You were there, Mike?
Oh, no, I was.
Oh, jeez.
Pay-per-view.
Were you there?
We saw it on pay-per-view. Remember, Mike?
No, who was there? Anyone there? There. You're going to have to tell a bit of the inside scoop. Okay. So we get guys that were there. But, he went in and, and Joe Rogan just talked about this 2 months ago, which he called, and I couldn't even find the exact thing. I think he said it was the best fight of all time. So it's something to that effect, like 3 times. And it was for many reasons. It was recorded, it was put on YouTube, it was a battle of epic proportions, right? And it was just, and I just remember looking at his eyes, if you remember, when he walked in, and I was like, when I saw fights later, I was like, oh, he's not losing. He's not going to lose, yes. He will never quit. He will never quit. I know him, he will never quit. And that's what it came down to. He didn't quit. He couldn't quit because he was just, that's his makeup, that's how he was built. I think there's different ways of interpreting that fight, but I think he knew what he was doing in a lot of ways. And when we look back and we start to kind of connect the dots, shit, even the whole thing about his, fighting the police force to get his pension after a decade. We were like, hey man, move on with life. He knew what he was doing, and he won. And so, we kind of, looking back now, he's touched people around the world, and that's pretty incredible. I see him in my kids now. I'm just going to bring up a brief side note, but, when my son was born, they're here, he's 8 now, 9 now. Like, the first thing I saw, like, when he comes out, I was like, oh my God, Sean. Like, what the hell? And, it's probably like that pure Gannon or something like that, right? And even now, you look at him and he's got those eyebrows. I see some eyebrows out there. It's kind of like a constant, really? Kind of like, you got him over there? Right there, right? What's going on, right? Kind of surprised all the time look, right? So we had that, and I was with Peter McLaughlin once, and my daughter was about 6 months old, and she just looks at us, and whatever, lollipop dropped or something, and she just starts crying, and her face goes into this face, and he goes, oh my God, that's the Sean Gannon rage face. Whoa, what is that? And I was like, I don't know, man, like, that's scary, right? So, he lives on in his family. He lived a full life. We're trying to, make sense of it all, but also just to say, he lived in a different country. He had a career. He had law enforcement. He, went to college, had multiple degrees. He had a son. He covered a lot of ground. He lived a full life. He, and in the end, which to be fair, I actually I really couldn't tell how many people he's impacted, how far the impact was, but I would recently I would meet people in California, and they would be like, oh, that's Sean Gannon, Sean Gannon. That's it, brother? What? Oh, no, amazing. And you're just like, what? How did you know? Are you sure you know about this? So, I'm only sort of coming to terms with, that sort of piece of it. And, I think the thing I'll end on here is just that, I was kind of thinking about his superpower. It wasn't just that he was a good fighter and that he was a tough guy, but he was a great human, and he was a kind person, not judgmental. So that gentle giant type feeling, but combining those two things was really special. You meet this just monster coming at you, and then a big bear hug, and then it's like, oh, what is this? And then you have a conversation, and he's listening to you and thinking, and he's probably thinking 10 times faster than you, but he's still going to listen, right? And the stories I've just heard from people is that he's been a great friend to people, to a lot of people, and I think, ultimately, how we're all measured, I think, is, have you loved people, and how many people loved you? And I think that's what he was incredibly rich with. So, thanks everybody. I'm going to turn it over to my mom for a couple of words, and then, again, start to think a little bit, if you don't mind, and come up with some little anecdotes. We'd love to hear some stories from you.
I was there with his childhood, but Brian covered it all. So I think that's that. He's going to let that go. But I'd just like to bring it to the time when Sean became a father also. His son Joseph is right back there, taller than Sean now. And he would be, I don't know how he did it, living in South Boston. How do you manage it? You have a little baby, you come home, you get gallons of milk, and then you pick up your child and walk in 2 blocks before you can find a parking space. I said, oh my God, I don't know how you do it. But then he'd come up to me, and let's have such a wonderful time up in Maine, because I had a great place there, and that was just heaven. He could be there, relax, the lake, the woods. When Sean was there, when he grew up, all he did was read up on the third floor, up on the top floor, and we'd say, go out to the lake. No, but now he had his son there. He'd go out to the lake, he would enjoy it and have a good time. And he was so proud, to bring his son there and have a beautiful time. And then another kind thing about Sean, my husband had Alzheimer's, and he couldn't do anything. But Sean would be so helpful. Whatever Bob wanted. So if Bob wanted to go sit in the car for 2 hours behind the driver's seat, Sean would sit beside him and just say, Bob had Alzheimer's, so he would just sit beside him in the car for 2 hours and say, Bob, tell me about yourself growing up. What kind of cars did you have? Where did you go? But just that kindness to me, I can just sit here for 2 hours, let him talk. That was it. And he had that kindness with so many people in here, just listening to them and helping them. So the early parts, follow me. Touch on the parts when he starts to be a father and enjoying that time with his son and all the time with the family up there in Maine too, and coming down to Florida to visit me too. It was always wonderful to be with him, and he always helped everyone so much. So thank you very much.
Does anyone want to step up and have a couple words? Oh, thank you.
My name's Larry Paul, by the way. I can remember when Maddie Ryan graduated the Boston Police Department, I had one of the old school leather police jackets, and we needed a patch. So I went into C6, and Sean was working the front desk. And I'm like, Sean, any way, I can get a patch, so I can run next door to Sturgis's, get it sewn on. And he looks at me and he rips the patch off the shirt he was wearing. And I'm like, Sean, you didn't have to do that. And he was like, no, it's for a fellow brother. Not a problem. I got another one in my locker. And I said, well, why didn't you just get the one in your locker? But I just wanted to just say that real quick. I'll never forget that. And that's just who he was, man. Like just a good person, big heart. But that was all. I just want to share.
I say this, but you're a caring person, and Sean never did any little bit of pushing, opinion, bullying, anything like that. Not even in like a little, secret way. He was always so non-judgmental and so caring, tolerant of all people. And he was like, yeah, and we had a conversation. He said he considers himself a protector of the realm. It's an age-old role in humankind, caveman days, castles, Roman times, whatever it is, and a gladiator at the gates protecting the city. And that story about dressing up, that's exactly it. Badass, hey, I'm gonna wear my whatever it was. And then he's educating the people who would come and do, violence to someone because they're wearing something different or whatever. And just such a compassionate person. Everyone would meet him first. They'd be like, whoa, who's that monster? And then they'd realize he was the guy who took out Kimbo when Kimbo was inhuman destroyer punching people's eyes out, and then they'd be like, oh. But then they'd leave a half hour later, an hour later, after working with him or talking with him, comfortable and happy and a better person for knowing him. He's a complex thinker, and like you said, he listens. He's not just smart. He listens, and I've had when I've had issues that are in crisis, I talk to him. I would call him, and we'd eat dinner, and he helped me through a lot of stuff. Yeah, just the warmest, sweetest, nicest guy who was gifted with hands that put people to sleep. And I learned a lot from him about training the boxing. Do this. Don't just say, oh, stop, because someone do this, and let them know. And then just about soft training and becoming a good training partner. And I'll turn it over. I think, could I just put maybe this over your shoulders or around your waist, and this comes through. There are a lot of high-level black belts here, Dooms, and I saw Keith and Keurig and a lot of other folks. I'm sorry if I'm missing you, sir. Tell me your name again, bro. Anyway, yeah. So I'm honored that he came and got his purple belt and brown belt, and this should have been 2 weeks ago, but this is for him for eternity. And we love you, Sean, and you're always with us, and we love you. A little bit odd here. So the next thing so the first day of the police academy, Sean and I, we had been preparing for about a week before, getting our books together. We had khaki uniforms, and Sean, you don't want to stand out. Anything that you can do, to blend in, that's fine. So they get you together, they make you drive together in the car. So right when we picked them up at 6 a.m. on our first day, it was June 26, 1996. He comes in the car. Huge shiner, black guy. First day of the police academy. So me and the other guy, Billy Gallagher, are looking at him like, my goodness, it's gonna be an interesting day today. So we end up showing up at the academy, and everyone's lolling around there, and everyone's super nervous, and no one knows what they're doing, and so there's about 90 people there, and all of a sudden they come, roll call, get over here, so we all get in line. There's 3 big lines of 30 guys each, and so we were talking before, like, just stay cool, so Sean and I are in the front of that line, and the drill instructor comes out and he starts walking down. He won't even look at us. He's walking down like we're standing here from here, and so he walks by me. That's fine. I'm right next to Sean. Walks by Sean. And we're like, oh man, the coast is clear here. We're looking good here, And then walks by, and then he stops. And the drill instructor starts going back. I'm like, and he starts going back. He hasn't said a word yet. All the way back. Yeah. All of a sudden, he just goes right in his nose to nose, What the hell did you do to your face? And he turns around and he goes, I'm a boxer, sir. And it was all downhill from there. They tortured us because I was standing next to him. He was I was trying to move away from him. And now I'm the boxer's little buddy. And they tortured us. But the funny part of the story is life goes full circle. He's a 15-round fighter, So they, kicking us in the shorts every day. Right about the time until they started sparring with us, the instructors, so they'd bring some little short fat guy like me in there and just be like, punch my head. And I'm like,
You know, oh, thank you, sir. Yeah. And then, the whole group, and then it was Sean's turn. And, we'll get he's a big, tall, glass of water here. Sean would just, be labeling these guys, beating the crap out of because they'd be torturing them the whole day. And, it was just ironic, because suddenly after that, they didn't really seem to bother him anymore, So we were walking around, and, oh, Sean, what are you doing today? Now I'm moving a little closer to him, Great. But I just had to pass along a famous family story I share during Thanksgiving, and that's all I gotta say. Anyone else want to come up here?
My name is John Doomsday Howard. I'm also a UFC veteran like Gannon was. Sorry guys, for this. Gannon for me, before I became a big time UFC star in my career, he was always there pushing young fighters, pushing us to be better. And to me, guys, he's a guy who beat up Kimbo Slice. I mean, I know if you're in the MMA world, in my world, that was huge. That was the biggest. He was the superstar. I was like, wow, man, you're invincible. Kimbo Slice, you beat him. Not only you beat him, you beat him at all. He was like, wow. I mean, the first time I had to spar with him, I was nervous, and he kind of took me on his wing and trained me and helped me throughout my whole career. Also, my Professor Ginsburg was out here. That's also my professor. And Gannon, to you, congratulations on your black belt, because it's an honor to say that we're under the same thing. I'm also a black belt, but then we're black belts together, and that's come big to me. We're black belts under the same professor, which is huge. I love you, Gannon. I was in tears when you go, and I just want to say thank you. You're one of the toughest motherfuckers ever to step in the cage and help young fighters like me, but also the nicest and kindest and inspirational people out there. I mean, I had certain personal struggles, and I'm telling you, that man was to call me, talk to me, and then even fights where I didn't thought I would lose, even fight I shouldn't be the cage in. He's the one that pushed me. Hey, do that you could do it, you could be there. So Gannon, I love you so much, and he's a great reminiscence of MMA fighters like me. So thank you.
McKinnon. I met Sean in 1998. He was 200 pounds at the time. Our friend Mike Shannon brought me over to meet him. He's like, I have someone that wants to bulk up. You need to meet him. Well, success, Sean. So I'll add a couple of different wrinkles about Sean. And you have to know Sean. He was quirky in all the right ways. I've never met anyone that lived life under his terms as much as he did. He made it work. I remember he was over at Boston Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and at the time, Kimbo Slice was this internet phenom. Bare knuckles, this and that. Sean had torn both his pectorals. He had fought an MMA fighter a few months before against Mike Dexter, and he had a head kick and he had a concussion problem. And he had a torn labrum. And he was training for the fight. I mean, he was hobbled. And I remember, someone slapped his arm down and he's like, oh, man. And we're like, what's up? And he was like, oh, my labrum's torn. It's 10 days before the fight, maybe. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm still going to fight. So at the time, it was a winner-take-all money fight. Each side had to put up $10,000. And Sean, and this just speaks to his, just his empathy and him projecting the best qualities to everyone. He's like, someone on the internet said if I put up the money, they'll back me. Doesn't know this person. This is just a nameless, faceless, pseudonym on screen. And this is 2004, before, it was just still the infancy of the internet. So, and then Sean ended up just, he made it work. He just stopped paying his rent and So when you saw that look coming out to fight, I can't lose, it was because he couldn't lose. He was a lot of money, riding on that, Oh man, he was like, I was taking it. He was so tactful in so many different ways. He would always preserve people's dignity. So, you know, he didn't sit there and talk about what you shouldn't be doing or you know, the negative. He would just talk about, oh, you could do better. You could do better. Like, you could do this. You could do that. And that was one of Sean's best qualities. Was he always tried to preserve someone's dignity, and if you lacked that at that point, he would actually try to give you some. You know, if you were Sean's friend, you couldn't speak ill of that person in front of Sean at all. Sean just, you know, let's concentrate on the positive. You know, he was a great unifier, just in a very understated way. I mean, there's so many people here from so many different walks of life, all because of Sean. You know, and he's the most, in so many different measurable and immeasurable ways. He is the best man I've ever met. You know, I mean, when I say the best friend, I don't mean my best friend. I mean just the best friend you could have. You know, and if his fight skills rivaled his ability to be a friend and a member of the community, he would have been undefeated. He wouldn't have had any rivals. And I can wholeheartedly say that. I love Sean. I'll miss him forever. I love him forever. I talk to him for hours each week. And just about all sorts of topics, everything from comic books to quantum physics. I'm so thankful that I got to be a part of his life.